Okay, welcome everybody. I'd like to call to order the Regional Council meeting of May 8th, 2023. We acknowledge that the Northern Rockies Administration Center is located in the heart of the traditional territory of the Dene, Cree, and Dune Saw people of Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nations. We further recognize the rights provided by our treaty. Finally, we also celebrate the contributions and the enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. Do we have any additions to the agenda, Council? CAO, I believe you had one addition?
Yes, I do, Mayor. The up highway meeting.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in attendance that wishes to comment on the agenda, online or in person? No one online? No one in the gallery? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Goering, seconded by Councillor Enax. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. I'll ask for a motion to adopt the minutes as follows. Committee of the Whole, April 24th, 2023. Regional Council, April 24th, 2023. Can I get a motion? Moved by Councillor Goering, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Are there any errors or omissions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor? That carries. Okay, moving on. Business arising from the minutes. 6.1 Animal Control Services. From the regular council minutes of April 24th, 2023, it has been confirmed that the animal control officer will adjust the schedule of patrols to be 5 days weekly, Tuesday to Saturday. As the expiration of the terms for both animal control and pound services approach in July 2023, council direction will be required in the very near future in relation to animal control, pound services, and animal welfare services to support the procurement of those services in either their current or any adjusted scope. Is there any additional business arising from the minutes, either council or staff? Councillor Goering.
Just want to express my appreciation for making that. Thank you.
Yes, that was great news. Okay, moving on. Reports, bylaws, policies. Administration report number 2523, the Industrial Revitalization Tax Exemption Review. Speaking to the report, Mike Gilbert.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The issue at hand, it has to do with the Industrial Revitalization Tax Exemption, originally adopted in 2018, extended to 2021. It represents a tool for the attraction, the recruitment of investment. It's one of only 3 tools really that's available to most local governments to attract investment in a direct fashion, given the restrictions placed on local government by the community charter. It is among those 3 tools, it is by far the least complicated. It has proven in past years to be quite useful in our attempts to recruit investment, and while it has not resulted directly in any particular investment and it hasn't been drawn on by any investor, it falls in the positive column in discussions, and it is always highlighted in discussions with investors. And it is also something that is in place in many municipalities competing for investment. Being originally adopted in 2018 for a 3-year term, it was extended in 2021. It is set to expire with that extension August 31st this year. And it's brought to council for decision now so that investors considering it as a factor in a final investment decision have some certainty as the direction council will take, and so that should council wish, a bylaw can be prepared and presented for adoption in a timely fashion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Gilbert? Councillor Souls, go ahead.
I still believe after all these years, even though it has not been utilized directly, I believe that it's still a good tool, and it's sends a message from us that we are open for business and we would like to help stimulate business where we can. I would like to see us just remove the deadline on it. I was present at both of these previous meetings and to see where the decisions were made regarding the dates, the end dates on them. And frankly, I think that we always assumed that there would be more business uptake before this time. So we thought that we were quite comfortable with the date, with giving it an end date. Had we known now what we, had we known then what we know now, I think that we probably would have left it open. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Anyone else? Councillor Gerwin, go ahead.
So just to confirm, Councillor Souls, are you meaning to not put an expiry date on it at all?
Yes, I think that we could, the reason that I say no expiry date at all is that it is something that we can revisit at any time as a council. If we have this bylaw, it's for our purview anytime. So let's say we get some uptake on it and we do get some business in, then we can actually look at it again and put it to bed at that time. But instead of leaving it there or giving it a year or two or whatever we decide, we will have to deal with it later anyway. So let's deal with it on the other side of having some business. That's what I'm suggesting.
I guess my concern with leaving it open-ended like that is how does it come back up then for council's review, the next council that comes to be?
Just bylaw review. I don't know.
Mayor Fraser, go ahead.
Thank you. So I would have the same question. I would be happy if we put a deadline on this a year after our term is done, which gives the next council an opportunity. It will come to them because of the expiry date. My experience with these is that once they start coming in and you actually start getting businesses that take advantage, industry that takes advantage of it, things start going really well in your community. And pretty soon you start to forget that these things are out there and existing, and sometimes it can come home to bite you if it's just hanging out there without a date. If you give yourself the opportunity by forcing an end date in it, it forces. And I think if this council is comfortable with the entire bylaw as it is, that we run it through our term, but then allow the next council a year, or almost, I guess it's almost a year into their term before they have to really consider it. So, and at that time, you know, business industry things might be different, and it gives them that opportunity a year in to reconsider whether this bylaw should still exist. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr.
I was just going to make a motion that we, I just have to go back over to it because I don't have it in front of me. That the amending bylaw be brought back to the regional council, readings and adoption, to change the date for applications as part of the Northern Rockies to August 31st, 2027.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Gerwin seconds. Any further comments or questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on. 7.2 Administration Report 26/23 BC Hydro Public Electric Vehicle Fast Charging Network Plan Follow-up. Speaking to the report, Lisa Thompson. Please take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a report following up from our discussion on April 24th regarding BC Hydro's public electric vehicle fast charging network. And again, tonight we have representation from BC Hydro joining us online as well if you have any additional questions. So following the April 24th council meeting, regional council requested additional information on properties that electric vehicle charging stations could potentially be established on with closer to the downtown core area. So this report provides some options on the second page in table 1, including properties owned by the Northern Rockies, as well as commercial properties that are for sale, as well as an estimate of the cost to develop those properties for EV charging stations. There's also information for consideration, just to reiterate that the BC Hydro's EV fast charging network, and the intent of that is to essentially provide fast charging outlets for multiple vehicles and to get vehicles back on to highways. But that there's opportunities for staff and for BC Hydro to look at opportunities to establish level 2 charging stations within the community and within the downtown core area that are better suited for encouraging retail. There's information also just in summary regarding the EV fast charging partnership, what BC Hydro would be providing as the operator and maintenance of the charging stations, as well as some expectations and requirements of the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality as the host. Some considerations for council to consider is that there is a demand for EV charging in our region, and that demand is expected to increase through targets that the BC province has implemented through legislation such as the Zero Emission Vehicles Act and regulation. The current EV charging charger that we currently have, our level 2, will not be sufficient to meet the needs of the traveling public and our residents in the near future. It's a slow charger compared to the fast charging units, and there's only one port, which we're anticipating will create queues. Again, the BC Hydro fast charging network is intended to provide rapid charging and multiple EVs to facilitate en route charging. So that's one of the foundations behind this program. Traffic within the downtown core is expected to increase with the development of McDonald's. And as was mentioned earlier, a traffic safety review was completed, which has not been provided to council at this point, but will be shortly. But adding additional charging infrastructure into the downtown core we would anticipate there'd be an increase of traffic from that as well. There's opportunities at these fast charging stations as well to create kiosks and or to put information into BC Hydro's Plug Share app, which would allow a user to actually look at the app and look to see where our services are located. And that obviously our level 2 charger has some use, but again, not anticipated to be able to meet the demand of all the traveling public. There's some information at the bottom of the report regarding our level 2 charger and the use as of the end of April. And council may wish to consider charging fees on our charger, which we are currently not doing at this point. So I'll open it up to questions.
Do you have any questions or comments? Councillor Andrews.
In regards to the municipality's level 2 charging station, once BC Hydro implements their charging stations, is that one not really going to be needed anymore? I'm just kind of curious as to, do we even consider running it still after we have all these other chargers in place? Seems to be a lot longer of a charge. These other ones would be quicker. I don't foresee it being utilized. We've had 7 unique users so far. I think let's maybe just get, yeah. So I think once we have other chargers, we wouldn't see people coming to the slower one. So that might not even be an issue. We might end up getting rid of it, right? Just kind of curious on what everyone else thought.
Did you want to speak to that, Ms. Thompson?
Just one of the great things that we can do with that charger is we do have a dashboard that allows us to see usage. So it's only been in for a short time. So, you know, the data that we have right now is over the winter. So it's not overly representative of what we could potentially see on that charger. But I agree, if we have additional charging stations in town, you know, the pressure on that particular one would be reduced. We won't know how much it's going to be reduced though, until we actually have more data to actually check to see what that looks like.
Great. Mayor Fraser, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I thought of that too, but wouldn't it be great if all of them were being used all of the time? And if the fast chargers were being used, somebody could still go over and use the slower one if they had to. Locals might use that one, knowing that there might be a queue at the other ones. It might take a little bit longer, but they might have something to do at the rec center. So, I'd be comfortable leaving it there. I know we're thinking out into the future. My question though is to the BC Hydro representative, if they're here. I understand there was some discussion about the costs of upgrading a particular site if this did go in. What exactly is BC Hydro prepared to? Are they prepared to do paving on a lot if we provided one for this?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Council and Mayor. With respect to the question on paving, BC Hydro will be able to pave the premise. Typically, those are the stalls that are outlined to provide EV charging, and anything out of that is generally out of scope. So as an example, if we're looking to install 4 stalls, 8 stalls, whatever the number is, then we would provide paving for those stalls only, and anything out of that would be out of scope. Yeah. And sorry, and just to maybe echo one more comment on the level 2. I personally see that as a complementary to the fast chargers. So fast chargers are great to get vehicles from empty to about 80%. And any additional time that you spend after 80% would be, it would be sort of the best way to put it would be diminishing returns. So think of a person, if you're very hungry, you eat very fast. Once you get, kind of full, you'd slow down. So that's when we see the benefits of having level 2s around in the area. So once users are about 80%, 85%, they can hop off, plug into a level 2, and then trickle charge all the way to full if that's what they want. But for users looking to get back onto the road, again, we encourage users to spend about 30 to 40 minutes there, not much more. So anything after 80% would be sort of diminishing returns for the amount you'd have to pay versus the time it takes to receive a full charge. I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you. Councillor Souls, you're next.
Well, I'd like to say to BC Hydro that I appreciate the initiative that they're taking in this regard. Just a question regarding the uniqueness of our municipality. I believe that we should also be installing one at Toad River and at Muncho Lake. And given that those are both on the BC Hydro grid as well, I mean, not the power line grid, but still power supplied through BC Hydro. And those are remote communities inside of our municipality. I believe it would be fitting for us to be asking whether or not we can have them, because what really surprised me in our previous council, one of our councillors, Councillor Penny, was has a shop in town, and it was amazing to me how many of the traveling public were contacting him regarding the tourism public, regarding the long haul. So I see that a charging system right in Fort Nelson is a great idea, but I think it would be much better for our municipality as a whole to have another one up highway or another 2 up highway.
Mayor Fraser, you're next.
Thank you. I had 2 points, and that was one of them. I was going to put a plug in for Muncho Lake, but thank you, Councillor Souls, for doing this. I guess the next thing I wanted to just throw out there, because it was part of the report, but we really haven't talked about it, and that's thanks to staff for pulling together some potential lots in the downtown core that we might be able to use. I would like to include the 5307 50th Street or 50th Avenue, I guess, as a potential site. I think although it's $122,000 to pave it, it sounds like Hydro is prepared to take up a piece of that. I think there's a couple of different benefits that we can derive from paving that site and having potential charging stations in there over the long haul. And so, I'm not sure what the process is from here. I know that staff has been recommending either end of the town at the 2 parks But I really would like to stress that I think if we can get people into the downtown core, it would be good. So I'm not exactly sure what the process is, but I'd like to see us consider that site as well.
Okay, and before I get to Councilor Gurring, I just want to make one note that that site, Mayor Fraser, is currently being used by some of the tenants in the building. So I would suggest, communicating with the tenants to see if there's any conflicts there. Councilor Gurring, you're next.
Yeah, so I just wanted to express my thoughts around, we've just had the downtown revitalization plan presented to us. And I think we all voiced concerns over the brown lots in the community, especially along the highway. And I don't know, question is, the lot across from where the McDonald's is going in, right next to IGA, is that one for sale? Like, I know it's part of it's, some of it had a gas station on it and it's been remediated, or it's being remediated. There's lots of, I think, open space there. And also where the huge eyesore where Robin's Donuts used to be, some of those sites, like right there on the highway, you drive into town, you see it, like, especially if it's going to be 4 or 8 stalls, it's going to be rather large. So I'm wondering if we could investigate some of those lots.
Councilor Stolz.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I appreciate that you're bringing up the brownfields, because there'd be nothing better from a messaging point of view to put a green charging station right on top of a brownfield. And given that, and no, I'm not kidding, it's actually real. So I think that that's actually one of the mechanisms that we could use for leveraging a brownfield, because the green fuel idea is very supported at every level of government. Therefore, I think that it's a leverage point. And the messaging, imagine even being able to place a charging station on top and let people know that that's where it is and what it is. It's really interesting.
Maybe said company could give us a deal on to, just saying. It would be great for them to put in their annual.
Mayor Fraser, did you have your hand raised for another comment?
No, thanks. It was, I just lowered it now, I think, didn't I? Is it down?
You did, yeah. Okay. Councilor Dickey, go ahead.
This is for BC Hydro. So the charging of a vehicle takes how long to get a full charge, to get from, say, Port St. John to here and then here to the next charging station? In speaking with tow truck drivers, they've had several occasions where electric vehicle has been 2 hours from here because they haven't had enough electrical charge. So I would like to see BC Hydro's long-term plan on Alaska Highway, considering 2030, we're all supposed to be driving electric vehicles. And would our grid, our hydro grid, support all these charging stations?
Oh, thanks for that question. I guess I'll just break that up in 3 parts so I can make sure that I respond to all three questions addressed. So the first question there with regards to how long does it take to charge a vehicle? In general, the high power chargers we're looking to install here, for every 10 minutes you have plugged in, you can regain about 100 kilometers worth of range. So, 10 times, 2 or 3 would give you how many multiples of kilometers that you need. So 30 minutes would give you close to 300 kilometers worth of range. So that's for the high power charging. And then our long-term plans here along the Alaska Highway, great point. I know there's another council had brought that up earlier. So we're full steam ahead here on connecting the province up to the BC Yukon border. So what I can say in confidence is that we do have a number of other strategic locations along the Alaska Highway that we are gonna work to have charging stations located. So just at a high level, from FSJ up to Fort Nelson, we've got 101 as a potential location. We've got Prophet River as a potential location, Bucking Horse River, and then obviously Fort Nelson. And then further up north, we've got Coal River, Toad River, Tetsa River, and as well as Lyrid River as potential locations as well. So we are targeting to have charging stations spaced no more than 150 kilometers between each community. Yeah, we've got a plan in place, and we've got multiple strategic locations that we've identified. So we are hoping to complete the geographic loop here sometime in 2024. So stay tuned for that. And then, sorry, the last question there was, if you don't mind reminding me, I was kind of lost my notes here, but there was a third question there.
And our BC Hydro grid, can it fill the capacity for all these extra charging stations, considering 2030, we're supposed to all be driving electric vehicles?
Yeah, no, great question. So we've got a group internally at Hydro that looks at long-term demand planning. So as part of those scenarios, we look at what future load forecasts could look like with the adoption of vehicles. And what I can say is that our team, takes a very long-term window approach when planning feeder upgrades, substation upgrades, and things like that. So we will be able to account for those going forward. So we've got a team dedicated at looking at capacity.
Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Just one last comment. I'm not opposed to cleaning up our brown sites. I think I would rather look at municipally owned sites prior to spending money on other sites for this project.
So could I just make a comment about the brown fields?
Please do.
So in my research, I've included in the report the ones that were apparently available for sale. I suspect if they're not for sale, it's either because they're undergoing reclamation still and don't have a certificate of compliance. And in the case of Robin's Donuts, there might be other extenuating circumstances around that one of why it may not be listed for sale. But the ones that are included in this report are the ones that were overly apparent and listed in public spaces. So I'm not sure if council's interested in taking over a contaminated site or not, but we can certainly look at those other ones that were mentioned to see what the status of the land is on those.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we move on here? Okay, hearing none. We will move on to 7.3, NDIT Marketing Grant Resolution Viewpoint. Speaking to this report is Regional Development Officer Krista Vanderseen.
It's me again.
Hi.
Yeah, so this is just a simple request. A grant opportunities become available through NDIT related to marketing initiatives. And if successful, the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality could access up to $20,000, which would help with our Viewpoint project that was approved at the December 12th, 2022 Regional Council meeting.
Okay, any comments or questions on this request?
Don't be shy about asking for grants. I recommend that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality apply to the Northern Development Initiative Trust, NDIT, Marketing Initiatives Program to come from Northeast Regional account for $20,000 for the Viewpoint Film Project.
Okay, we have a mover, seconder, Councillor Enax. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thank you. Moving on, Administration Report 28/23, UBCM Asset Management Planning Program Grant Application. Speaking to this report is Luann Watson.
That is a long walk. Time consuming. Good evening. So this is a straight looking for some authorization to apply for a grant through UBCM. UBCM has been fantastic in supporting asset management initiatives, as well as FCM. This project falls in line with that FCM grant that we received, last year. for municipal asset management program. And we completed that part. That's that phase one, that process mapping bit. This is phase two, where we're going to get into some organizational developmental processes for document control and training, and hopefully support that succession over time. So we're looking for an application to support a $60,000 project with a potential grant of up to $25,000.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, we have a recommendation here. Would anyone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gruen, go ahead.
Yeah, I move that an application be made to the Union of BC Municipalities Asset Management Planning Program for funding up to $25,000 for phase two of the NRRM Asset Management Planning Project implementation with a total project cost estimate of $60,000.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Enox. Any further comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on, we have our Northern Rockies Regional Municipality 5-year financial plan bylaw number 215, 2023. And speaking to this report is Trevor Ryerchuk.
Thank you, Acting Mayor and Council. This is in front of you for final reading and adoption.
Okay.
I'd like to make a recommendation that the 5-year financial plan bylaw number 215, 2023 be adopted.
Okay, we have a mover. We have a seconder, Councillor Gerwing. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thank you. Moving on to the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Tax Rates Bylaw number 216, 2023. Speaking to the report, Trevor Ryerchuk. Go ahead.
So this is. My apologies, sorry. The tax rate bylaw is going through a change. I had some errors in the initial readings, and so we need to repeal those first 3 readings. And you're now looking at the correct version and asking for the first 3 readings of that.
First and second.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Andrews, would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that 3rd reading of the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Tax Rate Bylaw number 216, 2023 be repealed, and that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Tax Rate Bylaw number 216, 2023 be given 3rd reading as amended.
Okay, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Enoch seconds. Any more comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on. 7.7, Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Official Community Plan Amendment, Highway 77 Large Holdings Agriculture to Highway Commercial, Bylaw number 213, 2023, and zoning amendment, Highway 77 A2 Agriculture Small Holdings to C3 Service Commercial, Bylaw number 214, 2023. Speaking to this report is Radha Adhikari. Welcome, Radha.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Acting Mayor and Council. On March 27th, Council had considered about providing the public notices. So as per Council consideration, the public notices were initiated, as well as the referral was sent to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. So far, a letter of support has been received, which is attached with the report read during the public hearing. No other support has been received except that. There has been a few correspondence between Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and Northern Rockies Regional Municipality staff. Beside the correspondence included in the report, we have received another correspondence today where Moti has suggested dates to set up a meeting with applicant and NRRM for the further review of the proposal. As indicated in the report, the amendment will trigger redesignation of the remainder parcel, which can be done during the amendment process, as the remainder parcel would be not satisfying the area requirement of the large holding agriculture. Similarly, the development of or the construction of a frontage road to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure standards would be required with the cost borne by the developer. Nevertheless, OCP amendment changing designation of the parcel from agriculture large holding to highway commercial would result in its inclusion in a development permit area. And as requested, a survey plan may be required for the boundary line of the proposed rezoning parcel prior to the adoption of the bylaw. After the bylaws were given first and second readings, staff did further research and also reached out to other planners in other jurisdictions to hear their opinions. After analyzing the findings, staff made a recommendation to defer the decision until and after the OCP is updated. As outlined in the report, there are several aspects to be considered before the decision is made. I have mentioned a concern about the subdivision that may take place later in the future once the rezoning is done, which may be surmounted if the covenant 219 is placed as the applicant included during the public hearing time. However, that covenant 219 would be applying on the land title, which would mean the whole entire parcel would be prevented from subdividing. On the other hand, when it comes to the enforcement of the split zoning, it becomes onerous process because of not having a, it becomes onerous because split zoning is not something that our municipality has been practicing. This is the first time we have got the application that concerns the split zoning. I acknowledge the concern that the OCP update information should have been provided to the applicant. However, there were no certainty about the OCP update until April 19th, 2023, when the budget was approved. And had there not been the OCP update as an option, had there not been the OCP update for the municipality to take place this year, my recommendation would probably have been that the application is denied based on the analysis that I have provided in the report. As well as referencing current OCP, which reads as regional council may consider applications to designate parcel from highway commercial use in the vicinity of the junction of Highway 77 and Alaska Highway. In my view, such applications should be evaluated considering different lenses. On the other hand, we have a definite policy regarding the agricultural land that says lands with a majority of land with agricultural soil capability of 1 to 5 shall remain designated small holdings agriculture, large holding agriculture, or resource conservation within the Fort Nelson planning area. However, the bigger picture is that this zoning would bring future complications. Rezoning 21.1 hectare of agricultural land to commercial seems to be opening up a door to establish any or all permitted uses on the property identified in the C3 service commercial zone. Currently, there are 24 permitted uses in C3 zone. And although council would get a chance to review development during the development permit process, as long as it will conform to the zoning and land use bylaw, it may easily go through. This rezoning has also a high potential to create a precedence, inviting other similar applications, which then would be dealt case by case basis without having a vision or long-term plan for the area. If there are several commercial uses established in the area that would directly and negatively impact the Fort Nelson economy or the Fort Nelson businesses, this will also link to the fairness to the businesses owners in the Fort Nelson who invest more to establish their businesses in the town. Not to say that Fort Nelson public wouldn't necessarily want commercial use in the vicinity of the Highway 77. But if they do, we will have a long-term plan on how that area should be developing without negatively impacting Fort Nelson economy through a robust public engagement during OCP update. And that's the reason why the recommendation has been made around to hold it until the OCP is updated. However, if council wishes, third reading can be deferred to a later date, and staff would work with applicant to address the concerns identified in the report, as well as work with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Okay, so we have some information, a letter that came in from L&M Engineering. We also received some feedback at the public hearing. Would anyone like to make any comments or ask any questions at this time? Councillor Souls, go ahead.
I'm not sure where the concern comes from in that this would open a can of worms for future, given that we're not looking at just giving opportunity for anyone to apply for a change of their agricultural land. That's not the point. The point is that this is actually at a highway junction, and there is only two pieces of property, as far as I'm aware, that actually touch that highway junction, and therefore the limitations on, I mean, the argument or the pushback against the idea of it being a great risk to us from opening the door for all sorts of other farms being flipped over to commercial or to highway industry is, I don't think that that's really the case. I'm not sure. Is there, because it's the actual junction that we're working on and we're talking about, and we're looking at rezoning a place right at the junction for use at the junction, I don't see how it relates to the other properties. So I don't know if you want to reply to that.
No, unless you want me.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so, sorry, my name is Lisa Thompson, the Director of Regional Development and Planning. So it's not just the fact that it sets precedent, it's that we're making a decision on a parcel of land in the absence of guidelines or vision for that area. So it does set a precedent in that we heard tonight from one of the gentlemen who attended the public hearing in that he felt he was being treated differently. And that's the result of not having those definitive guidelines. It's a case-by-case basis, essentially. So though we agree that there is, council may consider, as per the OCP is clear that if it's classed as 1 to 5, then it shall, it's not a may, it shall remain designated as agriculture. And that's the only real clear guideline that we have in the OCP in this instance.
Mayor Fraser, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I normally don't do this, but I'm going to. I'm going to move option number 3, that the third reading be given to the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality NRRM OCP Amendment Large Holdings Agriculture to Highway Commercial Bylaw number 213/2023, and that the third reading be given to Northern Rockies Regional Municipality NRRM Zoning Amendment A2 Agriculture Small Holdings to C3 Service Commercial Bylaw number 214/2023 associated with a parcel of land located at mile 317 Alaska Highway legally described as district lot 2725, Peace River Regional District, accept plan 25242. And if I have a seconder, I'll explain why.
Okay, so we've got a mover for option 3. Do we have a seconder, please?
Out of curiosity's sake, I'll second it.
Okay, so seconded by Councillor Andrews. And do we have any further discussion or questions? Councillor Andrews, or I'm sorry, Councillor Souls.
So I understand the need for having for staff need to have some guidelines on this particular issue. And I understand why there'd be confusion on that. That piece of property was for sale for approximately 20 years. After the last person did any farming on it, you can actually tell by the tree growth that's where the trees have taken over the fields. You can tell about how long it has been since it was utilized. It was all part of it was on the fringe of the agricultural growth that was taking place in the 80s. And then it was the reason it existed as a farm parcel in the first place is that if you'll notice that just beyond that area on the highway, about mile 319, is where the first research farm in Fort Nelson was done by Agriculture Canada as a research farm, just on the south side of the highway, about 2 kilometers farther up the road. And so the infill of farm layout happened from that starting point and worked its way toward Fort Nelson rather than starting in Fort Nelson and working its way toward. So this is why this parcel existed as part of the farm, picture. I think that the fact that it was for sale for a very, very, very long time, and that there's farmers who have left the area isn't just an indication it wasn't a very strong candidate from a farming point of view. And as a farmer myself, I assure you, it's not much of a piece of farmland. It's not a very good piece of farmland. And I think that the OCP will come in handy, and because there is a discussion around farmland that needs to take place in the OCP. And I'm actually surprised that not only that area, but a whole lot further out along the Alaska Highway toward the Raspberry and so on is not in the agriculture land reserve, because the soils in the Muskwa Valley are some of the better soils around the Fort Nelson area. And so it's strange to me that those ones down on the south side of the highway all the way along get the benefit of the water that leaches out of the hill and so on. Doesn't matter whether you have a dry year or a wet year, you have moisture in your soil because of where they're located. But the piece of property in question is not really a good candidate for any form of farming that I can think of. So I'm also in favor of this.
Okay, Mayor Fraser, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
I do. Thank you. So my justification for moving this option number 3, even though staff have given us a preferred option that they would like to see. I've got several points that I'd like to make, and I did discuss this with staff Friday before I left, and I understand the comments that they've made then and tonight to be good intentioned, but I really think that in this particular case we need to consider moving forward with this project. I think the project does stand on its own merits as the best use of that particular land, recognizing that it is the intersection of 2 highways, and that type of intersection. Well, all over the north, you can see examples of that intersections like that have grown up and produce commercial type operations in and around them. And if you just, I mean, you can start right there with the airport road and the connector right here in town ourselves. It created some commercial around that, and just start going down the highway from here. Well, you can go all the way to Prince George and see examples of intersections of highways like this where commercial has grown up around them. So it's not something that's unheard of. I do believe that we have a process in place. We were moving along that process, and we didn't hear these concerns from staff at the committee of the whole or at first and second reading. And I know that we did authorize an OCP process to begin in this year's budget, and that did change things a little bit perhaps for staff. But the fact of the matter is, before that decision was made, we had an applicant who put in their application. They were following in good faith the existing process that we have in place. They answered all the questions that were put to them by council. As they moved along through the process, they've invested, I don't know how much money, but they've invested as we've moved forward. And so there has been no public opposition that I've heard, even though Mr. Wells, he had more questions, I think, than he had about the way he was dealt with than he had about concerns for this type of an operation moving forward. So I don't see that as a negative. I see it as positive in that there's potential for him to consider that in that area. And wouldn't it be good if we could see more investment into the community? I'm concerned about turning away investment, although we might not see it as a turning away the investment. If we delay this, a year would be lucky if the OCP was finished a year from now. It's more likely going to be 2 years. And if the proponent is not going to move forward with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, not knowing whether or not the municipality is seriously going to consider moving forward with their request, that's a costly process. It's a timely process. So if we put them off 1 year, year and a half, 2 years, then they have to start the MODI process because they're more comfortable. They're looking at 3 years down the line, or, you know, anywhere from 1.5 to 3 years down the line, depending on how the timeline's all. This is investment that potentially comes to our community now. So why would they? We still have control over form and character. We still have some control over what goes on, and that nobody else is knocking down the door. So there might be an opportunity to look at the rest of that area around there with respect to the concerns that staff had moving forward. A little bit around the economic development side of this, there'd be, you know, I think a significant shop and yard, which leads to opportunities for local contractors to assist where they can. I think sometimes it only takes one project like this to turn an economy around. And I think we heard Katrin talk about that tonight in her presentation, that sometimes it just takes that first investment to start moving things along. And I don't know that we want to be that community that turns that potential investment around with the state of the economy that we have right now. There'll be no houses out there. So any of the workers that will be out there will be either hired from town, or they'll be moved into town, in which case they're either buying or building a house when they come to town. It's not really our job to pick winners and losers as far as businesses go, just to respond to staff's concerns about investment and businesses. And it's really competition. It's good for businesses. And if there's that opportunity there to move the economy forward, I think we should. So I think it would look like we were working with them in bad faith. I know that there was good intentions there. I know that staff has been working with them. So please don't take it like that. But I could see where it could look like we were dealing with them in bad faith. And the last comment I want to make is just based on the way that letter from them is worded. If it wasn't written by the lawyer, it was certainly reviewed by the lawyer. And I'll leave it at that. I think that there's a lot of good reasons for us to move forward with this and consider the next bit of what happens out there in the next OCP review. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. We have a seconder. Do we have any further comments, questions, discussion? Anyone? Councillor Gurman, go ahead.
I know I heard the word rezoning. So if this motion goes forward, so if this rezoning has been approved, would the land be able to be subdivided and sold off? I would like a clear answer, yes or no.
So unless there's a section 219 covenant restricting subdivision, then essentially, yes, as in accordance with our current bylaw, you can create 0.1 is the max or the minimum size parcel area. So yes, there could be a subdivision.
So I guess
However, I'm sorry, I'll just say the applicant has indicated that there's a willingness to talk about, having that covenant on title, but what that looks like, we haven't had that discussion yet.
thank you. So I guess there within lies my discomfort, and I would be far more comfortable if there was a covenant in place. I don't know for how long or whatever, but the details can be worked out. But if we could add that to the options, that there is a covenant in place to be determined what that looks like, that prevents imminent subdivision, then I could move forward with a positive vote.
Okay, well, Councillor Goering, would you like to make an amendment to the motion?
Well, point of order. This is a bylaw. This is the bylaw approval, right? We can't do that sort of thing. We can add, we could add another resolution that speaks to that separate from this, but we can't, and I don't think we can. I mean, I'll look to the corporate officer on that, but I'm pretty sure this is the third reading, and you can't. It's read the way it is. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so the motion's been made and seconded, and because it's a bylaw reading, there are no amendments with conditions for readings. So council could pass a separate resolution after the vote is taken on this, if there's further negotiations with the proponent. And just a reminder that MODI approval is, or bylaw adoption is contingent on MODI approval. So there are some remaining steps to be completed before this bylaw comes into effect. So what third reading essentially means is that you can no longer amend those bylaws. So if you're accepting these two amending bylaws as presented in third reading, they will go through the remaining process unless council decides down the road to repeal them, as we did with the tax rates bylaw this evening. So first reading is an introduction of the bylaw of any sort, amending or original. Second reading is where debate and discussion occurs, and any revisions are then brought forward for council in their third reading, which is what's happening currently. And then adoption is when all remaining steps have been completed and council's prepared to proceed with adoption, which would put the bylaw into effect.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mayor Fraser. Go ahead, Councillor Dickey.
I have just some questions around the repealing. So if we were to approve this today and start going through the steps with the understanding that the subdivision and the covenant be put in place before the final, I would be comfortable with making that decision of going through the process of the third reading, as long as the company understands that we are going to go through a covenant to make sure that that parcel of land is not subdivided.
Sorry, if I could just get clarification, because I think we're thinking along the same ways, but if we were to approve it as it's written today, then it's approved. So
No.
so you have to
But a bylaw can
vote
get
it
to third
down.
reading.
So sorry,
A bylaw can go through readings and not be adopted as well.
right? Yeah.
So that's the final, but what we need to communicate is that the motion on the floor is for third reading. So if council takes a vote, you can pass another resolution that, for example, staff enter into negotiations with the proponent to resolve the covenant concern about subdivision. But that has to be separate from the motion on the floor currently.
But so, sorry, I'm just not understanding. So once it's approved, it's not approved with a covenant, it's approved.
So then if the resolution to have a covenant in terms of subdivision comes after the bylaw approval, how does that work? Sorry,
If I
It's
can,
not adopted.
it's not adopted.
Okay,
right?
Mayor Fraser, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead. One last comment.
thank you. I did want to speak to the 219 covenant, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about now. That 219 covenant is different than the bylaw, and the bylaw is not approved. The bylaw has gone to third. It gives everybody the opportunity to move forward. It gives us the opportunity to discuss the site with the proponent. We could talk about the 219 covenant. The point I was making about forming character and the concern about having more than one zoning on a piece of property, you can negotiate with them to put a fence so that, you know, or some type of a barrier that divides the zoning so that staff have an opportunity to come along and make sure that one doesn't encroach into the other. All of those are conditions that can be worked out with the proponent after third reading. You haven't approved it yet. The approval comes when the approval comes, and there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen before that matters. So, you know, third reading is exactly that. It's third reading before approval allows everybody to move forward with a bylaw that's nearly complete, but not entirely complete.
Okay, thank you. I think everyone's had an opportunity to provide comments and questions. So I will go ahead and call the vote to question. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
Opposed? Opposed? Please record Councillor Gerwing as opposed. That passes. Thank you.
Wouldn't this now be the opportunity to make the motion for that covenant so that we guarantee it?
Okay, am I hearing a motion from yourself, Councillor Andrews?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how I would word it, but I would like to have a motion that I believe it was covenant 219 be negotiated with the proponent prior to adoption of the bylaw. Does that cover it enough, Jayleen?
Okay, so we have a mover, we have a seconder. Any comments or discussions on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call this to vote. All in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Could I make another one, please?
Go ahead.
That staff be authorized to work with the proponent about a barrier on the property to ensure that the two zones do not encroach upon each other.
Okay, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Gerwing. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Correspondence and information packages. So we have 3 items here. We have a letter to Community Futures, Peace Liard, support for Community Futures, grant application. We have council information package, April 26, 2003, and council information package, May 3rd, 2023. Does anyone want to pull anything for discussion? If not, we'll just receive that for information. I'll ask for a motion to receive that for information. Councillor Enax, moved by Councillor Enax, seconded by Councillor Andrews. In favor? All opposed? That carries. Great. Okay. I'll ask for a motion to discuss the letter from Northern BC Tourism Association. Moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Souls. All in favor? All opposed? That passes. Okay, support for Northern BC Travel Journal. Any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Andrews.
It looks like something I'd support. And I would make a recommendation that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality supports the application to the Northern Development Initiative Trust from the Northern BC Tourism Association for the Northern BC Travel Journal.
Great, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Enax. Any further comments or discussions? Mayor Fraser.
No, I was just going to second it. Thank you.
Okay, right on. Okay, If there's nothing else, I will call the vote to question. All in favor? All opposed? That passes. Thank you. Okay, council CAO additions. CAO, we had one addition, Toad River meeting dates. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, we have been in discussions with the residents up at Toad River and have some potential dates for our up highway meeting this year. For the new members of council, just a quick history. So each year council does endeavor to hold at least one special meeting up highway to get out into the region a little bit more. We tend to hold that meeting at the Toad River Community Hall. The preference of the Toad River residents is that it is held on Saturday. And right now our two potential dates are June 17th and 24th. So we'll have corporate services send out a doodle poll just to see which one is preferable if either are. So June 17th or the 24th. Yeah.
Great. Councillor Dick, you have a comment. Go ahead.
Just to comment on the 17th, that's the run up there.
That's a summit
run. But the
Yeah.
24th sounds great.
And the 17th is the Rotary Fishing Derby.
Yeah. No, they'd be fishing. So I'm out for the 17th, yeah.
Mm.
I would ask if there's a need for a doodle poll.
It seems that the 24th would work for most at this point. Okay. So maybe we can tentatively.
We'll send that out in an email
Yeah.
and just get some responses. Yeah. Okay, you bet.
Okay, moving on, standing items for discussion. Would council like to speak to either of the items listed on the agenda? Councilor reports or business outstanding? Councilor Souls, go ahead.
Good. Just a couple of short reports, council reports for my attendance at Kofi. I haven't reported on that too. Just a note, it's great to be in a room with the leaders of the forest industry in BC. The premier was there speaking. Some of the corporate leaders were there. Some of the Indigenous leaders were there, showcasing some of the Indigenous-led forestry initiatives in the province and so on. But I managed to have a very good discussion with a financier that is in the background of most of these large businesses. And in the context of mills closing down in the province and in the context of capital fleeing the province, in just as a framework, we saw now quite a number of mills shut down in the province of BC over the course of the last 6 months. We saw a very active logging season in Alberta during the same time. And we see a great deal of capital investment from the milling world of BC in other parts of the world. So in the discussion with the financier, I asked if financial capital would be made available for industries like what we need in our area, because we have a need for a forest industry of some form. And there's only 2 letters in the word she answered with. It was a yes or no question. And so the idea of, I think capital is difficult. However, I said, can I frame the question differently to you? And she said, go ahead. And I said, so if we were to develop a large scale green energy program in the Northern Rockies, would there be capital available for that type of thing in your estimation? And remember, I'm talking at her estimation. I'm not talking officially at a formal meeting. She said, absolutely, there's funding available for that. And so just a way of looking at our own future, I appreciate the angle that Peak Renewables and Fort Nelson First Nation are taking in the hydrogen pellet world, because that's consistent with the direction that an industry, we can develop this industry. It's just not a forest industry, it's a fuel industry, but it happens to be in this using the same trees. anyway, so that's the only takeaway I wanted to take from the Kofi. I could talk a lot longer, but I won't. The next thing was a council report on, I attended the First Nation Major Project Coalition in Vancouver, and that also was very interesting. Congratulations to the First Nation Major Project Coalition and the growth and the buy-in by nations all across Canada. They introduced it as though there are at the first day we were there that there was 130 nations. Before the conference was over, there was, I believe, 141 nations that have signed on to being a part of it. There was a lot of discussion around how capital can be accessed for First Nation involvement and equity building within companies moving forward. And one of our previous finance ministers from Canada, Bill Morneau, spoke. And as much as many of the political people spoke out of both sides of their mouths, which is normal, Bill mentioned something that was, he said, looking forward, that capital will be more difficult to find rather than less difficult. Therefore, it will take very, very good planning on the part of any particular group, whether it's First Nation partnerships and so on. So I just that's my main takeaway from that. There's definitely a wide open field for the discussion around First Nation equity partnerships and regional, even regional development in Canada. But the onus will be on us and our First Nation partners to have very good planning going into it all. And that's my takeaway from it.
Councillor Dickey, go ahead.
I'd just like to follow up on that. I was at the same conference and it was a great conference. It is really eye-opening when you hear the Indigenous economics and the impact that they're having in all industries, not only business industries or industry, resource management, that sort of thing. But the one thing that I took away on there is we talk about the oil and gas industry and the resource extraction. Now they're all talking about these battery, that's my BC Hydro spiel. They're talking about electric vehicles and all this hydroelectrical battery materials we're going to need. So now they're talking about critical mineral extraction. So what are we doing to the environment? So there was a lot of discussion at that conference about critical minerals and taking inventory of zinc and copper and all the lithium and all the minerals that you need to make batteries. And then the life of the battery only lasts for 10 years. And what do you do with all the batteries for recycling? And so, there's really going to be an imbalance there. And I think there's going to be a lot of work that needs to happen. It really surprised me that Minister Wilkinson, he's at a First Nations Major Coalition meeting, and his fourth recommendation was that you meet with your First Nations in your community to build relations. And in my mind, that was number one. And I thought, if I was his advisor, I probably would have put that as number one, considering what conference you're at. So, but it was a really good conference. The next conference is in Toronto. I really wanted to attend the Indigenous Economics Conference in Vancouver at the end of the month, but unfortunately I can't. But it's really interesting to hear, they say there's 32 billion extra dollars in the economy because of Indigenous business. That's a big number. So I think we're on the right track of developing that relationship with the Fort Nelson First Nation and Prophet River. And we have a meeting that's coming up with them. So I think sitting down and talking about what are our priorities and what are the projects that we want to work with them on. Yeah.
Okay. Any other reports? Councillor Gerwin, go ahead.
I didn't go anywhere, so. So on April 16th, the Lamplighters had their board meeting. Unfortunately, I had to miss that one, but they sent me an update that they wanted me to share. Just so that a coordinator has been hired for the Better at Home program. The board is working on updating their policies, focusing on finance and human resource. They continue to work towards expanding their supports to and programs for seniors in the community of Fort Nelson. And they very much appreciate council's report, having reported to them the outcome of their request at this year's budget deliberations. So they wanted me to pass on their gratitude. April 28th, I went to the Community Health Plan Steering Committee meeting. There was a presentation by Cindy Southwick, Executive Director of Fort Nelson Family Development. I have some resources here to share. Well, only like share because you have to give them back. But if you want any of those resources, we could get them to you from Cindy. So their new website will be up and running very soon. Also at the CHP meeting was Byron Stewart. If you remember, a couple of years ago, I reported that he was the new Northern Health Recruitment and Retention Ambassador for the Northeast. He's visited the community of Fort Nelson once, but he does promise to connect with us to see how he can support the work being done in the community. On May the 2nd, we held our Environmental Advisory Committee meeting, and it was really a great meeting, very well attended. And our very own Lisa Thompson, she's a very busy lady, shared a great presentation on the local government action climate plan, the Clean BC Roadmap to 2031, and the climate preparedness and adaptation strategy, as well as a great education piece. Lisa and Hillary were looking for feedback from the committee on project ideas or ways to spend the annual funding the NRRM will receive from the LGACP. There was no shortage of ideas on the best way to use that funding, and a report will be coming back to council. And I was at the trade show on Saturday and thoroughly enjoyed myself. Those that stopped at the booth were really, really engaged. So it was a fun time. So thanks.
Councillor Andrews, you're next.
I can ditto the Sunday. I did Sunday at the trade show. It was great. Thank you for the chamber for hosting again. The turnout was amazing. I attended on Saturday as a civilian, and then I was at the booth on Sunday. It was an enjoyable weekend.
Great. Yeah, I'll second that. It was a great trade show, and a good first one back after it said 3 years, but it's actually been 4 years, correct? 2019 was the last one. Yeah, so first one of 4 years. So it was great to see everyone out. And I know our booth for the theater, we sold 2,100 mini donuts. So so the town got a good taste of our new products there. So, Mayor Fraser, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a bit of a report. I've been pretty busy, and I ate 10 of those donuts. They were awesome. I'd like to start at Kofi. So agree with everything that was said before. The two things that I was disappointed, to tell you the truth, this year's Kofi conference, although there were some leaders in the industry, the big players were all missing. Normally there's a session there with the CEOs from the major forest companies. They were conspicuously absent. Canfor had a vice president there who didn't even wear a suit. He was kind of incognito. He really didn't want to answer too many questions, but I think they wanted to hear what was happening. The premier, his message was very clear. It's a time of change. Get ready for it. The forest industry is not going to look the same as it did in the last 10 years. It just seems like every time we turn around, we really don't know what the working forest looks like. And there's one more initiative after initiative. And some of these initiatives I think are important. But I can see why industry is concerned about what's going. Councillor Gerwing, I think you call it the whack-a-mole principle. You just get one thing under your belt and something else pops up that they whack down. CN also made a presentation there. It was not their CEO. It was a vice president of, correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but she was vice president of public relations, I think she was. And she was asked a very pointed question about with critical minerals and all the opportunities in the north, whether or not they were prepared to work on that Fort Nelson spur and line. And it was a complete non-answer. She went round and round and round. and never gave any kind of indication whatsoever with respect to whether or not they might put some investment in that railroad spur from Buick to Fort Nelson, or whether they're even talking to anybody seriously about it. So it was a very disappointing answer from CN. April the 24th, I also attend the First Nations Major Projects Coalition. While I was there, I did an interview with Business in Vancouver magazine. The reporter was Nelson Bennett. Essentially, I told him all the same things as I told as I put in the article that we put in the magazine for the real estate board. Yeah, things are tight, but that we're doing better, and there's lots of opportunities moving forward. He really wanted to talk about rail, and really there was not a lot that I could help him with them, because we're really not in the detailed discussions that are going on with Peak and the nation, the province, and CN. I thought otherwise the First Nation Major Projects Coalition conference was good. I think we were partly there to support Chief Gale and as she raises the profile of our community and the region. I don't think there was hardly a speaker that didn't look to her and say what a great job leadership she's showing provincially and nationally, and that can only bode well for us. And I think supporting her in anything that she does to raise the profile here at home is an important thing for us to do. The name of the conference was the Values Driven Economy, and it helped, I think, by being there, I was able to understand better the Indigenous values as they're looking towards some of these big projects, resource projects, values around relationships, early relationships, values around sustainability and protection of the land, and equity, ownership in some of these big projects, so that they can fund and support community building in their own communities. And if we're talking to proponents that are coming to us, we've got to make sure that they're talking to the nation and give them advice, if they're looking for advice around, incorporating the Indigenous values into what they're doing. I agree with Councillor Souls. It was interesting to hear about how they're financing projects moving forward. Lots there around equity partnerships and how they can fund that, because of course they don't own the land that they're on. So it's very difficult for the nations and communities to put up any equity or to raise competitive capital. There are banks out there who will say, oh sure, we'll give you a loan, 12% interest. It's not competitive, right? So they're seen as the opportunity there is for banks to take advantage, because they know the Indigenous nations are trying so hard. The American Inflation, the Inflation Reduction Act was also talked about there, and it was interesting to know that when it comes to the critical minerals that Councillor Dickey was talking about, that we are considered in Canada a domestic source for the Americans, and the Inflation Reduction Act has $750 million that they are prepared to lend and to grant to businesses and industries that are advancing the whole critical mineral issue. And I just don't wonder if there's an opportunity to explore that from a infrastructure perspective, to see if there might be some interest in investing in this part of the world, because critical minerals are going to be an important part of what comes out of the north, I believe. There's two sides to that coin. Whether or not we want to get involved with the American government or the American military, because they're the ones that are administrating the $750 million, I think is something. It's a double-edged sword there. But we are considered to be a domestic source of critical minerals for the Americans. That came out of that report as well. So it was a great conference from a learning perspective and trying to understand what's happening out there. April 26th, I went to the NDIT annual board meeting. Just on my way back from the First Nations Coalition. So we elected a new executive. We received and approved the 2022 financial statements, showing that the NDIT is still doing well, even though You know, they lost a substantial amount of money like everybody else did with investments. There's still enough there. The original fund is still solid, and there's still an awful lot of money there to invest in the different regions around. And so we should see some of that NDIT money coming up. We also had some discussions around succession planning and the annual report. So for staff, the annual report is online, and some really good projects and things in that annual report that staff might want, economic development wise, that staff might want to look at as potential opportunities for grants here. On May 2nd, I attended the Northeast Leadership Table meeting, which was a meeting of mayors, rural directors, and the chiefs from the nations in the Northeast. A very good meeting, mainly from to get to know each other and start building those relationships that we talked about. The idea is to help reduce racism by by allowing us all to work together to understand, you know, the provincial initiatives and the negotiations and how they're going, so that we don't get a repeat of some of the public meetings that happened around the caribou the caribou issue in the South Peace. The public meetings there was an awful lot of bad comments and poor comments and racism, and if we understand and educate our public, because we're aware, it'll go a long ways, I think, to reduce racism around the TLE process, the modernized land use process, the cumulative effects decision at the Blueberry, as well as caribou recovery. All of those are issues that we'll be able to talk about, and actually pull together a pretty strong Northeast advisory group. I think that group of mayors was put out there by one a chief who said, if this group got together and we went to UBCM, we could decide which ministers would come and talk to us, and we could give them 15 minutes and then kick them out like they do to us. So there's you know, I say that tongue in cheek, but there's you know, there's a lot of optimism from that group about advocating for the Northeast. So that was May 2nd. May 4th, because I was in Fort St. John, I stuck around for the Old Growth Strategic Review Implementation Workshop. Councillor Gerwing, you will remember that NCLGA sort of lit their hair on fire a little bit because there was that meeting in Vancouver that nobody was, or I shouldn't say nobody, very few local governments were invited to talk about the old growth situation, the old growth forest, the old growth deferrals. They actually have 30 some odd, I forget the exact number that she said, 30 some workshops like this around, regional workshops around the province to talk about the old growth strategy, what the deferrals are looking like. What else did they talk about? They talked about Indigenous involvement, making sure that ecosystems are prioritized and biodiversity, and of course, transition plans for communities in the event that the old growth deferrals and maybe even protection measures impact communities negatively. So we had a workshop and we had lots of discussion around that. Well, May 8th, which was today, there was a emergency response meeting with mayors and chairs to update us on the fire situation and floods that are going on, 2 major fires in the Peace, as well as let us know a little bit about what's going on with emergency services around the province. They are gearing up. It's too early to tell whether or not this will be a really bad fire season, although unless we get some rain in June, all of us know that we've got a drought situation going on out there, and it's likely to be bad. We've seen about 1/4 of the snowpack come out of the mountains, and we're starting to see flooding already. So it's again a double-edged sword. We want it to rain, but we don't want it to rain all at once. We want it to rain because we need to get rid of the drought conditions and we need to get the bush wet and moved into that greenery. But if it rains too much all at once, then that snowpack's going to come out and we're going to see more and more flooding. So we want a little bit of rain slowly for a long time, not coming down all at once. And tomorrow I'll be at the Canada Natural Gas and LNG Conference. Whew. That's everything I've done in the last couple weeks.
Thank you for that. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Are there any motions for which notice will be given? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to the public and media question and answer period. Are there any questions from the public or the media in attendance? Anyone in the gallery? Ms. Vandersteen, please come to the presenter's table. Make sure your mic is on.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Acting Mayor, and Council. I just wanted to take a moment to thank Regional Council for your sponsorship and support of the trade show. As you can see, I'm still perhaps recovering, but it was a great weekend. I think we saw pretty much everybody in the community at it, and really appreciated the support of the exhibitors and the community. Couldn't have done it without everybody coming out, and without the exhibitors being willing to step in. And just want to let Regional Council know that I have asked Ms. McIver to put me on the agenda for the May 23rd meeting, at which time I'll bring you a bit more of a detailed feedback on how it went and where dollars were spent and that type of thing. So, but again, just wanted to express my appreciation. Thanks.
Thank you for all your hard work. Is there anyone else that has any questions or comments? Anything about the budget, priority set by council, agenda business, nothing? Okay. I will ask for a motion to move to a closed meeting. I'll ask that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91B of the community charter. B, which is personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for municipal award or honor, or is offered to provide a gift to the municipality on condition of anonymity. Can I get a motion? So moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Enox. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you. We'll take a temporary adjournment. And we will also take a courtesy break, say 5 minutes? Sure. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, I'll recall, are we ready? I'll recall the Regional Council meeting of May 8th. Okay, nothing to rise and report from the in-camera. I think that's it. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Enoch, seconded by Councillor Gerwin. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks everyone online. Have a great night.
Thanks, Acting Mayor Roper, for taking the meeting for me. So thanks a lot. Bye for now.
Anytime, Mayor Fraser. Thanks for all your hard work out of town. Appreciate it.